There has been a lot of debate and discussion about the idea of the death of Final Fantasy, especially over the course of the last couple years, because a bunch of the fans that actually grew up with Square Enix, perhaps even playing the first Final Fantasies, these games were marvelous, but they're very different than the current day version of Final Fantasy we have today, with big actiony combat and open world zones and tons of side quests that don't really feel engaging. Now, I still love Final Fantasy, but I can't really say that I don't kind of miss what we used to have. I really enjoyed classic Final Fantasy. In fact, this year I even went back and beat 7, 8, 9, and 10 again, and they're still fantastic. And a lot of that original magic is because of the creator of Final Fantasy, Hironobu Sakaguchi, and the amazing music of Nobuo Uematsu, making those classic soundtracks that truly blew our minds. Well, they've come together to make a new game. They've made a game that basically feels exactly like old school Final Fantasy, but extra tough, extra beautiful, and extra strange. But let's talk about that. Hi, hope you're having a great day. My name is DreamcastGuy, and if you could, please give this video a like and subscribe if you haven't already. So this game technically was released originally 3 years ago, but it was an Apple Arcade exclusive. So you had to have an Apple phone and you couldn't buy it. You'd actually play it on your phone, but you had to pay for the Apple Arcade subscription. You could not just pay a price and beat it. So while I did play this back in the day, it just didn't look great. I don't want a 80-hour-long RPG on my phone, right? I want to be able to sit down and play it on a big TV. I want to have a controller in my hand, especially something like this. A PlayStation 1 themed controller feels extra appropriate for these interesting backgrounds. Well, with the Neo Dimension version of it, this is more than just a port. It's actually a pretty substantial upgrade over the original game. They made things easier, which might sound bad, but it's actually a great change. I'm going to explain why. They've added full voice acting. They have added a bunch of stuff to this that honestly makes the game way better than it already was. Now, let's start off by talking about why this game looks unique. You're probably immediately having your eyes bug out of your head and asking, what's with the graphics? I mean, I guess maybe the term graphics isn't even the correct term. So in this game, we're playing as three main characters, Leo, Kina, and Cheryl. A princess, a sage who sort of has like different healing magics and some very beefy blasts, and our main character, Leo, who is a badass warrior style character with amnesia. There is this infection that's rolling through the world, the Mechteria. It's like evil monster masterminds that are slowly absorbing the memories, emotions, and world around us, right? So we're trying to stop the Mechteria. But during the course of this, what's really kind of the most visually striking is clearly the creator of Final Fantasy, Hironobu Sakaguchi. I think he misses those old school PlayStation 1 style pre-rendered backgrounds. You know, when you were playing stuff back on the PS1, there wasn't an ability to make fully 3D visuals in the way they perhaps imagined, you know, the way that Final Fantasy X looks. So instead what they do is make a really cool backdrop and you're essentially running around on a very big HD picture. So for this, they physically built actual dioramas, hundreds of actual dioramas, and then scanned them. And so when you play the game, you're running around on real art. And I have to say, this works incredibly well, especially on a big TV. I'm playing this on a PlayStation 5 because I want to get the Platinum Trophy on it. Seeing this game in 4K on my big TV while just sitting down and having a chance to play it, it truly looks like a work of art. But I have to say, it's also incredibly cool to hear Nobuo Uematsu coming back to this. I mean, the fact that this is actually being published by Square Enix, this is the first time that Hironobu Sakaguchi is actually working together with a bunch of the main Final Fantasy team and stuff for this project. And it's so cool. It really does feel straight up like a classic Final Fantasy. Now, in case you are wanting more of a vibe, more of that retro throwback, if you are specifically wanting that FF vibe, you can actually put in the soundtrack of older Final Fantasies. It's super easy, just at any time, literally even in the middle of fights, you can just say, pick a battle theme. You could choose music from Final Fantasy XIV, the Pixel remasters, the 7 remake trilogy. It's extremely cool to just instantly be able to swap. Now, personally, I'm playing through the game with the soundtrack that Nobuo Uematsu made for this because I think it's really good, but it's also cool just to hear new Uematsu soundtrack. Now, let's talk about the combat itself because I think this is perhaps the biggest advancement over classic Final Fantasy, and I kind of hope that more RPGs come up with crazy concepts like this. So when you get into a fight, there are random battles. When you get into a fight, though, it's classic turn-based combat. So you're taking turns hitting people, you have offensive and defensive abilities. You can heal, you can shield, you can put up barriers to soak up damage or do special magic strikes. Now, each of the different hits that you do, your characters don't just hit. They can actually make their attacks go in particular lines. Some people can do area of effect where they drop like a big circle of damage. The main guy, Leo, he can shoot like a sword strike that cuts in a direct straight line, where Ankina can do these curved magic strikes that basically boomerang around the map. Now, the point of this is that in a normal fight against 3 enemies or 6 enemies, it's not super vital, but in bigger fights or areas where there's people that will ambush you and you're going to be hit a bunch by huge hordes of enemies, it's nice to be able to area effect burn them down. Now, here's the other part of it. I know that some people don't like random battles. I know some people kind of think it's a strange concept or kind of archaic at times. So this has a thing called the Dimension. This idea is that you can save up your random battles. You can store up to 30 monsters. So if you are going to be going through like an area, so you're going through an area and each of the fights has 3 enemies in it. Every time you would be triggering a battle, instead it saves those enemies who are about to fight into the dimension. And it'll just have a meter that's slowly charging up until it gets full. But you can also launch it whenever you want. You open up this pocket dimension of all the stored battles and fight them at once. So if you want, you can fight 30 enemies at a time, you can fight 10 at a time, 15 at a time, and when you do this, the dimension gives you these extra power-up bonuses. Depending on where you do your curved strikes, where you drop your magic, you can get extra turns, extra magic, extra damage. Now, I like this system a lot because it does make it where you have more decisions about how random those random battles are, but I do think this brings me to the biggest downside to this game just in general. Now, on cell phones, the original version of Fantasian was brutally, savagely difficult. And the reason I felt like that sucked is because, A, it's a cell phone game. The idea of a mobile game that requires, 20 hours of grinding before a boss seems incredibly strange. But I also kind of always felt like really steep difficulty in turn-based combat typically just means they hit you harder and they have more health. And that's it. It's not like there's some sort of mechanic. It's not like there's a rhythm to it. It is purely just stats are bigger. Now they have introduced a normal difficulty. In the cell phone version, there was purely a hard mode. There was nothing else. You had to play a hard. And I have to say, the normal mode, it's a lot smoother of an adventure because there are some incredibly tough fights in this game. Incredibly tough. You don't get a lot of experience points from fights. A lot of times you do have to dimension and save up to do big, huge battles in order to get leveled up at all. And also, it does feel like the amount of healing items you get are very plentiful, but the money you get isn't very, very lucrative either. This is the kind of game that encourages grinding. It encourages side quests. Now, the one thing I'm not going to show you in this is that later on in the game, this is broken into 2 chunks. It's 2 separate chapters, episode 1 and episode 2. Episode 1 is much more story focused, lots of cutscenes, lots of cool character interactions, lots of chance to enjoy that full voice acting that's in the game now. But the second part starts to go much more open world. The second portion is when you start to get growth maps. This is where you can actually make different skill trees and customize your characters and really kind of explore the game in a different way. I gotta say, I like the fact that this game does have so much to do. I like the fact that part 1 and part 2 feel very different, and now that they're combined in a singular project, I do think that Final Fantasy fans will appreciate this. I feel like newcomers will appreciate this, but more than anything else, I want people to support it because I do feel like voting with your wallet is important. Because this is being published by Square Enix, I hope that if this game is successful, it will kind of show them that, hey, we do still want those turn-based Final Fantasy style games. They are still important to us. The last big detriment to this game is that since it originally launched on phones, it does feel like the UI, the buttons, the combat information and stuff is still extremely big and bubbly. Lots of stuff that clearly was originally supposed to be a touch interface. And to me, it does not look good. I also did notice that sometimes the game will mention if you're playing it with a controller. I think some of the prompts and stuff still think you're playing it on a phone. I don't know why they didn't change that. It feels weird to say, like, turn on your controller now. It's like, dude, I'm playing this on a console. I have to have the controller on, right? Overall, though, I am very, very happy with Neo Dimension. I think this game is extremely, extremely unique, and for Final Fantasy fans, I feel like it's a good chance to celebrate the classic roots of the best RPG series of all time. But tell me your thoughts in the comments down below, and if you could enjoy this video, give this video a like and subscribe if you haven't already, and please keep dreaming. Oh man. What a truly good time getting a chance to play this game. I've been excited for it forever. I kind of wish they didn't drop it in December, but I'll take what I can get.
Thanks so much for watching that video. If you want to see something else, you can always click this link to see what I put up last, or, subscribe and see what's coming up next. Also, I promise that whatever I do, it'll try not to suck.